Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As usual, this is our first Thursday of every month office hour for the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs. We're here to provide you with a little bit of information that we've collected throughout the last month, but also provide an opportunity to engage in any questions and answers that you folks may have. I will let you know that this is being recorded. We house all of our office hours on our website. So if you happen to have a conflict in your schedule, but hear that there was some information that might be relevant to the work that you're engaging in, we do have those posted on our website for you to revisit after the fact. As I said, we're here, the Office of Federal Emergency Relief team, and my name is Shelley Shassi-Jandro. I am the director of the team.
I'm Monique Sullivan, and I'm the ARP coordinator.
I'm Karen Kusiak, and I coordinate CARES and CARISA, or some people think about them as ESSER 1 and ESSER 2.
I'm Kevin Harrington. I'm the Gear and EANS coordinator.
I am Mai Shasha. I am the fiscal coordinator.
I'm Robert Palmer, and I'm the procurement analyst.
And we all have very specific roles in the team, but we all are here to support you. So if you do indeed have a question, please know that our team is monitoring the chat box, and we'll go through the materials we have. And then at the end of the material that we have for you this morning, we'll engage in a question and answer session at the end. So just a couple things that we'd like to chat and bring to your attention today. We know that we have an ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Performance Report. So this performance report is for all of our federal emergency relief funds, exclusive of homeless and children and youth, as well as CRF funding. At this point, you folks have heard from us about performance reports many times, but we do have just a couple highlights for you. We also have some important fiscal reminders, as well as some updates in regards to plans for safe return to in-person instruction and the use of funds plan, as well as some information we'd like to share with you about maintenance of equity. So as I mentioned, we do have an ESSER performance report, and that performance report is due Friday, March 25th. It was released in December. So if this is the first you're hearing about it, we just want to be sure that you're engaging in conversation with the leadership team at your district level to be sure that tasks on this performance report are being tended to. Here we highlight when the projects and expenditures should reflect in your performance report. So it feels like it might be some time ago, but it really is state fiscal year 21 that we're looking at. You'll see there's a gap in CARES ESSER 1 when we talk about state fiscal year 21. However, we as a department have already reported on the behalf of our districts from July 1st, 2020 through September 30th of 2020. And then the reporting cycles for the US Department of Education have shifted. So they're trying to make that alignment. So that's why there's a tiny bit of a gap for CARES ESSER 1 in reference to the CARISA and ARP ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 reporting periods. We have a number of resources for you folks. Particularly, we host a walk-in virtual office hour every week. They fluctuate between Wednesday and Monday of every week. So one week might be a Wednesday, the following week would be a Monday, and so forth. We have a few of those remaining. We can, at the end, I will put the registration link in the chat box. Potentially one of our teammates has that handy that they can pop in the chat box. But those office hours, you have one registration link and you can attend any of them regardless of the day in which the Zoom information sends you. So 3/9, 3/14, or 3/23 has the same link that you can obtain and engage in the conversation. And those are open office hours, so it is very much for 1 hour of that week. If you have a question, our team will be available on that Zoom link to engage in conversations about the performance report.
I can take this one if you want, Shelley. So I've been coordinating the CARES funds, and believe it or not, we're getting close to the closeout period for CARES or ESSER 1. So they're going to be available for obligation, continuing to be available through September 30th, 2022. A tidings year has already been added to this. And by Maine's practice, our Department of Finance in the state of Maine permits you to continue to submit invoices, but no longer not after October 15th, 2022. And just as a reminder and inspiration, I guess, or to offer you a little bit of encouragement, we've noticed that there are over 40 SAUs who still have between 80 and 100% of their CARES ESSER funds remaining. Now, you may have obligated it, but you need to start showing us how you spent that and seeking reimbursement. So the closeout will be fairly easy this summer and next fall.
I can do this one, Shelley. So we just wanted to put a couple of just reminders in about invoicing and application updates. As you guys know, I apologize, my phone is starting to ring, so let me turn that off. As you know, we understand that many of you are looking at your applications and you're looking at your needs and you're making changes, which is completely allowable. We encourage it because we want these funds to be used for your best use of your funds at this point in time. But we do ask that you check with your business managers before making the changes to the applications, because what we're finding is there's an invoice, an application goes in, and then the business manager is like, why did this get kicked back? And we're like, because your application is opened, or the application gets reopened because an invoice did not align with the application, and the application coordinator is like, why did the application get reopened? And it's because it didn't align with the invoice that was submitted for that particular ESSER fund. So you always want to make sure that you're connecting with your business manager and the business manager, if you're an application coordinator, so that they're aligned. Especially now, we're getting a lot of requests to reopen applications because things are changing, but always make sure that you're in connection with your business manager. And on top of that, if you've already invoiced for funds and you want to start making some changes to some projects that have already received reimbursement for, you want to make sure that those projects are still reasonable to be able to accomplish if you're pulling money away or if you're adding money. So the necessariness and the reasonableness always stays in play, no matter what ESSER funds you're using. So just want to keep that in mind. Also, we are asking that you really try to align your expenses on the trial balance and other documentation to projects in the invoice. So completely honest, much of our time when invoicing is aligning what you have on where you've put your expenses in your invoice, and we're trying to align it to the trial balance and or other documentation that you've submitted. So if you have supplies and operation and maintenance, we're trying to figure out where that is in your trial balance. So any kind of notation that you can put in there will actually help expedite the invoicing process. And then align your object codes with expenses in the approved projects. This is just something that I've been seeing a lot, that purchase services are sometimes invoiced as supplies or invoiced as equipment. And then we see the documentation, it doesn't really align. So we're actually reopening applications to make sure there's alignment there. So again, you really want to make sure that your business manager and your application coordinator or whoever's submitting your invoices, that they, there is some communication there, because it will help speed up the review process. And then again, the last thing here is expenses need to be budgeted in the application. We understand things change and your expenses, your needs are changing, ongoing changes. But if you put an invoice in and there's no money budgeted in that project, we're going to open the application. We're going to reopen your invoice, and we're probably going to reopen the application for you to make adjustments to that. And again, that's where that communication with your application coordinator comes into play, and your business manager, because one person's not going to know why something was reopened and that kind of thing. And then we just We do have some invoicing instructions that we have on the website, but we did put a link in here as well. It's a little bit further down on the accordion under the ESSER information, but it is there just as a reminder. I don't know if Kevin or Maisha, you guys want to add anything to that?
So we just wanted to highlight the reimbursement timeline. And I know there's 2 questions in the chat box, and we will most definitely get to those 2 questions. I have them jotted down so that we can respond to both of those at the end of the presentation. But in regards to the reimbursement timeline, and this is applicable for all of our funding sources. So I know we have some folks here who had a question about EANS in particular, but this structure and this timeline is for all of our funding sources. So we as an internal team try to review all invoices within 7 to 10 business days. You will see that that's a little bit longer at this time. We've seen a huge flux because of the performance report and needing to have invoices submitted through June 30th of 2020. So we actually have every single teammate reviewing invoices at this time to be able to engage as quickly as possible with that invoice review process. And then DAFs, which is the second tier review for all invoices, can take anywhere from 7 to 25 days. And depending on the status in which you chose as a district to receive that reimbursement, whether directly deposited or mailed, can provide some additional time to this timeline. So anywhere from 3 to 10 business days for the check to physically be mailed. So this process on the short end can take anywhere from 17 days, but on the long end can take anywhere to 45 business days. So if you happen to have submitted a reimbursement request back in, let's use November, the tail end of November, right after the holiday, and you have yet to see a reimbursement or a direct deposit, a check or direct deposit, please reach out to our team. We'll do some investigation to see what might be holding it up, or where it is within this process to be able to kind of trigger and push it and nudge it forward. We want to be sure that we're meeting you folks' need, and we know that right now the need is most definitely to be sure that your invoices are as up to date as possible, but focusing on through June 30th of 2020 for all 3 funding packages: CARES, ESSER 1, CARISA, ESSER 2, ARP, ESSER 3. So we are doing our best to process those as quickly as possible. With that said, when you're working with your business manager and your business manager is working with our applicant coordinators, you folks can maintain the information in the performance report of those expenses and hold off on submitting the performance report until you've seen all those invoices get approved through the system. So making sure that you have that information so that you're ready, because when the performance report comes to our team, we will do an alignment. We will check to be sure that the federal grant reimbursement system matches the self-reported expenses in the performance report. So we just wanted to call your attention to the 2 plans that are required under ARP. The first being the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction plan. And this plan was identified in your ARP application, but we are also asking some questions in your ESSER performance report under the COVID-19 impact page. And essentially question number 3 asks if you reviewed it and if it has needed to be revised in the last 6 months. By statutory requirements, the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuation of Services plan must be reviewed frequently, which in the IFR indicates has to be at least every 6 months. We know that the U.S. Department of Education is reviewing these URLs frequently and reaching out to the department and asking for URLs. So there's also a section in that COVID-19 impact page that also asks for the link. And we want to be sure that that link is updated and publicly available through 9/30 of 2024, which is the end of the ARP funding period. And again, In regards to reviewing and revising, we want to be sure that as a district, you are maintaining that documentation. So when and if an audit comes down, if your school and district is selected, you have that information to provide to the U.S. Department of Education that indeed you reviewed it based on changing CDC guidelines, and these might be the changes that you made, or no revisions were needed. So that is most definitely in regards to the latest information from the CDC, as well as determining which policies must be in place for your safe return to in-person instruction and continuation plan. So I know there's a question, and I think it's timely that we address it with this slide. So there's a question in regards to, for the documentation of review of plan, can it be school board meeting minutes? So my only suggestion to you folks is to be sure that it is very clearly stated that it was reviewed and that it indeed either needed revisions or no longer needed revisions, and that that information is clearly stated on any documentation you have, whether it's a school board meeting or any other entity in which you folks are engaging in the review of these plans. And again, these plans need to be publicly available on your website. So if the plan happens to have changed, be sure that you remember to return to your website and update that plan on your website.
And Shelley, I just wanted to add one more piece to that. If your plan is dated, and if that date is what's on the publicly available plan, you want to make sure that it's within the last 6 months. Because I know I was reviewing a plan just the other day and it was dated for June of 2021. That's older than 6 months. And so technically you could say, you might even put reviewed on there or something like that, because if somebody looked at that, they could say, oh, this plan is over 6 months, or they, you might have reviewed it, but they might get held up by that date. So it's not that you should take the date off, but you should be ready or prepared to say, no, we reviewed it, or something like that. We reviewed it in December, we reviewed it in November, or something like that, because that might, if that's publicly available, somebody might be able to say it hasn't been reviewed in the last 6 months. Remember, it doesn't have to be revised, it just has to be reviewed. But in light of CDC guidance changing, it's most likely that some of your plans are probably going to be revised.
So the second plan, which is required in ARP statute, is the use of funds plan. And the statute and the IFR refers to it as the use of funds plan. We as a team refer to it as your ARP ESSER application. Essentially, those two are identical, right? It's in what ways are these federal funds being utilized to support your students and in-person learning? So again, this plan was asked within your ARP application. In your performance report, we are also asking for the URL of these publicly available use of funds plan. And indeed, there is some components that are required to be present on your use of funds plan that is publicly available. And the 4 bullets right underneath this information is directly from the IFR. And what we will do is we will, someone from our team, if they'd be so kind to put the URL for the IFR, that'd be greatly appreciated, because that provides a breadth of information about the statute and really says, this is what the statute says. Here's the direct language from the ARP law. And this is indeed what it means for our districts and for our states. So these 4 bullets are identical to the IFR, and this is the information that must be present related to your use of funds plan on your website. Again, there's a requirement to be sure that these are readily available through 9/30 of 2024, the end of the funding period for ARP.
And Shelley, I just want to add that in light of what I said about with the fiscal component, we are noticing that a lot of districts are coming in and they are revising their plans. They're putting in new projects, or they're revising projects, or they're taking projects out for whatever various reasons. your application needs to reflect what is on your publicly available website. So not that, remember, we've said you don't, there's various forms that you can use to put that public available use of funds plan, but you want to make sure that it aligns with what your application is. So that's really important. We've been noticing a lot, I've been reopening a lot of applications over the last couple of weeks. So you just want to make sure there's alignment with what is on your publicly available use of funds plan.
So I know that we've mentioned maintenance of equity in a number of our office hours, but again, we just want to draw your attention to this new fiscal and staffing requirement under ARP. So if you happen to be a district that potentially does not have an exemption, this is something that you should be thinking about currently. I had a conversation with a business manager yesterday who we know is right in the middle of business season, and essentially this component is on their radar, is on everyone's radar, however, may not be the priority at this time, but indeed it should be a priority because there was a proposed rule that went into effect, and it is to really promote accountability and transparency. So there are some requirements as a Maine Department of Education that we must do by the end of March, which we know time flies by, but that is indeed at the end of this month. So by 3:30, we need to be sure that on our website, we have identified all LEAs or SAUs. We use SAUs in the state, but from a federal statute, it is an LEA. So all LEAs that are exempt from maintaining equity, we need to post on our website. In addition, by the end of March, we also need to indicate of the LEAs that do not have an exemption to maintain equity within that district, who are the schools that are in the highest quartile of poverty. So again, we've made note of what this means. We've clarified that it is a disconnection from what we refer to as poverty in Title I. So really thinking about the number of schools that you have in your district, dividing that number by 4, and identifying that number of schools in your district as the highest poverty schools. So again, we have a page within our performance report that helps navigate maintenance of equity and asks some questions, because we're going to utilize that information to be able to present this material on 3/31 on our website. So also by the end of this calendar year, which we know, we have some certain dates that we want to keep in the forefront of our mind when we're talking about these federal funds. So March 31st, excuse me, we will provide the information related to the districts that are exempt, and then the highest poverty schools within the districts that are not exempt from maintaining equity. We also know that CARES ESSER 1 funding period ends in September 30th of 2022. And then in addition, at the end of the calendar year, December 31st, we must present all of this information for the previous school year. So for FY22, we will have to have all of this information on our website. And a couple of the things that we wanted to draw your attention to with that information from that rule that is going into effect by the end of this month, we will be hosting a maintenance of equity office hour. We have provided a maintenance of equity office hour in December, but we also want to provide another one, and we will work very diligently with the districts who need to maintain equity, and we potentially will break into small groups within that office hour to support you folks. So we have a designated hour on Thursday, March 24th at 9 a.m. I will copy and paste the registration link in the chat box for anyone who is interested. You are required to register in advance, but this link can be shared with anyone. So if you are engaging in conversations with your leadership teams and they want to jump in, share the link with them. If you're engaging in conversations with your business managers and they feel that they would like to jump in, go ahead and jump in. We've tried to make this information as widely available as possible. So we as a team have been able to have a presentation with the ASBO team, which is our business managers in the tri-state area. We have also been able to present this information to our superintendents back in December. So we're trying to get this information out as widely as possible. So invite all and any to this office hour. And what we will do is we will also send this information in an email by close of business today so that you folks have it as well. So any of the applicant coordinators and the superintendents within ARP that are listed in the ARP application will receive this as an email by close of business today. So I know we had a couple questions in the chat box, and I definitely want to get to those questions. We have some resources here for you folks. I'm sure you've seen them a time or two. And then also our contact information. What I will do is I will stop sharing my screen in a moment so that we can unmute anybody who has some additional questions. In regards to the performance report feedback, so a member of our meeting indicated that they had submitted the performance report, and will they receive any feedback? Yes, you will receive feedback. Currently, our feedback is being modified almost on a daily basis because we're attending webinars from the U.S. Department of Education as late as Tuesday of this week. We attended a webinar and got some wonderful information from the U.S. Department of Education, but required us to pause for a moment to think about how will we structure our feedback on those performance reports to be sure that we're collecting the information that the U.S. Department of Education truly wants. So for example, I'll use a real example. On Tuesday, they were really indicating that there's a difference between social and emotional learning and mental health. And I'm not sure that is extremely clear in our performance report because our performance report was released in December before they've provided all these office hours to the SEAs. So in regards to that example that I'm using, they indicated that when we are reporting at the department level related to mental health, that mental health service needs to be provided by a licensed individual. So they have a category where we're going to report some numbers related to social and emotional learning, but they also have a category that's related to specifically mental health. So when we are providing feedback for the performance reports, we need to have that information so that we are accurately telling the story of our school districts and who might be providing social and emotional learning, but who might also be providing mental health services. So that's an example I wanted to share with you. So yes, our team is working through those performance reports. We've done sort of a preview of all the ones that have been submitted at this time. And we are engaging with the U.S. Department of Education to be able to say, okay, this is what we're seeing. What information are you folks looking for? And how can we streamline the feedback to our district so that we are indeed getting the information we need to report back to the U.S. Department of Education? There was also a question in the chat box in regards to EANS 1. So EANS stands for the Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools. And even though it's referred to as EANS 1, it technically came out of the second relief package. So it came out of CRRSA ESSER 2. So just kind of want to make that denotion because EANS 1 timeline follows the CRRSA ESSER 2 timeline. So funds for EANS 1 have a period of allowability through September 30th of 2023. Even though it's referred to as EANS 1, it is not connected to CARES ESSER 1, which has a timeline and a period of allowability through September 30th of 2022. And I'm sure I've missed a couple questions in the chat box, so bear with me for just a minute as I take a look. And team, if you noticed one and you want to address it, go ahead.
Well, we had a question from Dawn and I answered it in the chat, but others of you may have the same question. What about reporting on CRF? We have not heard any indication of when that reporting or what the requirements are going to be for that at this time. we'll let you know as soon as we know.
And along those lines, we did hear back that there will be a performance report for the ARP Homeless and Children HCY. That will be coming down the pike at some point. We don't know when that's going to happen, but we did get notice that we're going to have to do a performance report on that as well. So don't have a deadline, don't have a timeline, but just kind of it's out there. So we'll let you know as soon as we know more.
And I was just asked for a clarifying question for the timeline, in particular for EANS. So EANS 1, which is a funding package that came to fruition under Carissa ESSER 2, has a timeline, a period of allowability from March 13th, 2020 through September 30th of 2023. And that applies to the EANS 1 funding as well as the EANS 1 reallocated funding. And again, that EANS funding was a specific pot of money for our non-public schools. So I'd like to open up the floor to see if you folks have any additional questions. I know that we had a 2-hour delay in my district. I went to bed not even knowing we were going to get snow and woke up from a call from the district. So I'm sure you folks have a number of things that you need to tend to, but our team is here to address any questions that you may have.
Can I ask a question about the performance report? So I submitted my performance report a while ago, and I know for a fact that I made a mistake on it. So do I have to wait for Karen to tell me I made a mistake, or can we open our performance report? I don't know how that works. I know I over-reported something from a wrong date, and I know I did that.
So most definitely, Dawn, we can reopen that for you at this time.
Okay.
Let me just take a note and we will reopen it this afternoon for you.
Yeah, thank you. It's not huge, but I don't want to waste your time because there is a mistake in it. I know for a fact, so.
Sure, and we appreciate that.
You see Mary Boyle's question. She's under Peter Tivitot.
Okay, so let me just take a look here. I think I understand the question. So I believe the question, Mary, is you've submitted the performance report based on the applications in their state on the day in which you submitted the performance report. However, there's conversations about making changes to the to the applications based on the changing needs and stakeholder consultation folks have been engaged in, and conversations that you folks have been engaged in. And what comes first? Like, do we keep the performance report as it is because it accurately reflects the applications now? Or do we reopen the applications, make those modifications, and update the performance report? So here is my question. I'm going to pose a couple questions so that we can think about this in the whole grand scheme of things. The performance report, a big chunk of it is about the money that has already been requested for reimbursement. That likely is not going to be impacted because that money has already been requested and received by the district.
Correct.
However, if we modify the applications, the projects that come into the performance report might be different or modified because you've reduced the budget for one project and maybe increased a project budget for another project. I think we're going to have to take that one back as a team, to be quite honest, and engage in conversation.
And really what I think, to be honest, most of what we've reported on is CARES 1, and what we're likely to revise is ARP. So the two things don't really, I just know from working with titles that once you request to open things up, it kind of freezes all sorts of other things. So I didn't want to request to open it up just as you folks are trying to review the performance report. I don't think one thing is going to interfere structurally or content-wise or anything like that. It was more of a process question for you folks.
So Mary, at this point in time, reopening an application won't hold up your performance report,
Okay.
but as you know, it will hold up your invoicing.
Yep.
So when an application is reopened, then you won't be able to invoice. But at this point in time, unless things change, and as you guys know, things are changing all the time, I don't foresee it holding up the review of a performance report.
Okay. So you guys are just always working with things constantly changing. I mean,
Oh yeah, like you guys are too. I mean, that's the state of
Okay,
education.
there we go.
It's
All
always
is fair.
changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, great.
We give them a big, we actually are like, we should look, when you look up dynamic in the dictionary, it should say education.
There you go.
Because yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Well, and we would think that even after a year after ARP has come to fruition, we wouldn't see, as many changes and ebbs and flows. But I hadn't really thought about it, but we went to a workshop this week and they were like, okay, ARP is almost a year old. And I was like, a year already? Oh my goodness, we are still most definitely building the plane while we are flying it.
Yep.
I think we're going to be until 2024.
Oh, Dawn.
Well, I mean, that's how long we have money. I mean, it's going to change unless you go nuts this year and spend it all. It's just going to keep morphing, every time the CDC says something, it's going to morph. So, I mean, I look at it as, I don't know about you guys, but I look at it as job security.
Well, we talk in our team, we talk about, having a level of humor in this work, because if not,
Yep.
we might not be here through September of 2024.
Yep. Agreed. That's how I do it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you folks joining us this morning. As I mentioned, we do have an office hour that we are devoting to maintenance of equity. So if you are a school that is 100% can confirm that they are exempt, this information probably will not be new in that March 24th office hour, because very little affects you folks, just maintaining the documentation that you need to identify the exemption. And then for you folks who are still sitting on the fence, like they're not really sure, this office hour probably will be very helpful. We will get that information to you, like I said, by close of business today. And our slides and our office hour will be available on our website by the end of next week. So within a week. Thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to potentially seeing you on March 24th, and if not, 2 weeks after in our the first Thursday of April office hour.